Sorry guys, I just really wanted an excuse to watch this film again, so welcome to a bad recap of Pacific Rim, a movie about giant robots fighting giant monsters. Absolute cinema. Now for a quick info dump. An interdimensional portal called The Breach opened at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and out of it came these things. They're called kaiju, which is Japanese for big scary monster. Traditional weapons like tanks and missiles proved ineffective, so humanity pooled all its resources to create Jaegers, which is German for oh my god, who cares? I just want to see the film where giant robots fight giant monsters. You can tell this is a science fiction film because humans would never unite against a common enemy, but you can prove me wrong by helping me invade France. Anyway, the neural load of controlling a Jaeger was too much for a single pilot, so drifting was introduced. I wish this meant they took the Jaegers for a spin in a local Tesco car park, but instead drifting is the process where two pilots meld their minds to share memories and instincts, allowing them to share the neural load of controlling a Jaeger while still acting as a single person. But let's be honest, it's not really about an issue with the neural load. Obvious lies. It's just the Jaeger Pilots Union wanting double the job positions. Thieving bastards. Right, that should be enough backstory to understand this film. Not that you need to understand this film, like I said, it's a movie about giant robots fighting giant monsters. Anyway, this is Riley and his older brother Yancey. They are Jaeger pilots, and oh my god, their helmets are full of piss. Drain it, drain it. A new kaiju has emerged from the breach, so they get deployed to go deal with it, looking like me at 10 years old walking to the deep end of the pool. Swag. They intercept the monster on its way to land and kindly ask it to return from whence it came. Just kidding, they beat it up. And since their Jaeger is American made and they're dealing with an unarmed individual, they shoot it. I guess old habits die hard. But the kaiju shrugs off the plasma cannon to the chest and lunges at the Jaeger, tearing off one of its arms and breaching the head where the pilots are. But it's fine, these guys are the main characters and... where'd Yancey go? With his brother gone, Riley is forced to pilot the Jaeger alone, but don't worry, he's only flying half a Jaeger, so I guess the neural load is also halved and therefore enough for one person. That is called boy maths and is why I'm 100,000 pounds in debt. He manages to finish off the kaiju and pilot his Jaeger to shore, where overcome by his wounds, he passes out in the snow. Everywhere I go, I see his face. 5 years later, the world leaders decide to stop funding the Jaeger program since bigger kaiju are coming through the breach and more frequently, and they've lost faith in the big robots. Instead, they want to use the funding to build a big wall. I'm sure this went well. They tell Stacker, the leader of the Jaeger program, to transfer all remaining robots to Hong Kong, the last remaining Jaeger deployment base in operation. We then see Riley, who has given up a life of fighting giant monsters and now works on the wall. And you know, I had my reservations, but that's a good looking wall. It looks to be made out of galvanized square steel. All you need now is some eco-friendly wood veneer and you're in business. We see on TV that a kaiju broke through the completed wall in Australia. I don't know why they bothered defending that country. I mean, the kaiju would fit right in with their wildlife. Riley then gets visited by Stacker, who begs him to return and pilot his refurbished Jaeger, but he refuses like, I can't get back in a Jaeger after what happened to my brother. Every night I hear his womp womp. Did you say womp womp? They arrive in Hong Kong and meet Mako, who is in charge of finding a second pilot to join Riley in his Jaeger, and we also meet Herman and Newt, two research scientists who love to bicker. Oh, please excuse him. All he thinks about is women. He loves them.
Shut up, Herman. I don't love them, okay? I study them. And unlike most people, I want to see one alive.
They enter the deployment bay and we see that they only have 4 Jaegers left. The Chinese Crimson Typhoon, the Russian Cherno Alpha, the Australian Striker Eureka, and finally, the refurbished American Gypsy Danger. Stacker then tells Riley their plan to drop a 1.2 megaton nuke into the breach, which is about 80 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Why'd you pan to her? The problem is that the breach never allows objects to travel through from our world, so Stacker meets with Herman and Newt for their solutions. Herman claims that the increased frequency of kaiju attacks will eventually lead to a double event, with multiple kaiju entering our world at the same time. This will force the breach open wide enough to successfully drop the nuke. On the other hand, Newt has a chunk of kaiju brain he wants to drift with, so we can share memories and find out more about the breach from the kaiju that uses. But Stacker sides with Herman's theory because it isn't insane, leaving Newt sad. The next day is the trials for Riley's co-pilot, where each candidate has to fight him with a stick. But Riley defeats each of them with ease, eventually asking if he can duel Mako. Oh, come on guys, I thought this was the film about giant robots fighting giant monsters, not the film about men fighting women. Mako is very eager to enter the ring because she really wants to be a pilot. She has the highest simulator score of any candidate and thinks she deserves to be Riley's co-pilot. But Stacker isn't too fond of the idea and gives a long, in-depth explanation as to why.
No.
After some convincing, he allows the two of them to duel.
Give it to me! Give it!
But despite them being very compatible and fighting well together, suggesting they'd be an excellent team, Stacker denies Riley's request to make Mako his co-pilot for reasons. Anyway, Newt has gone rogue and created a machine to allow him to test his theory and drift with a kaiju. After initiating the mind meld, he sees visions of the world beyond the breach with a kaiju production factory, but the process puts too much strain on his mind, leaving him unconscious. Meanwhile, Stacker changes his mind about allowing Mako to pilot a Jaeger and gives her permission to co-pilot with with Raleigh, who is pleasantly surprised to see her in the cockpit. They initiate a successful neural handshake, allowing them to take control of the giant robot. However, their connection soon becomes unstable, as Riley begins seeing his brother's memories from the moment he was eliminated, and Mako gets lost in the drift, stuck in a memory from her childhood when her parents were crushed by a kaiju. While defending herself in her memory, Mako accidentally activates the Jaeger's plasma cannon and begins charging it up, with the technical officers having to disable the robot's weapon system to save the facility. While that monkey business was going down, Herman took Stacker to visit the now conscious Newt, who explained everything he learned during the drift. Basically, the kaiju are clones created by a conquering race of aliens to be used as weapons to take control of other worlds. They originally tried to colonize Earth millions of years ago, but had to wait it out because the atmosphere wasn't ready for them. But recent human pollution has terraformed the planet, making it ready for their arrival. Wow, I can't believe I'm being lectured about climate change in a movie about giant robots fighting giant monsters. Stacker wants Newt to drift again to find out more, but he says he can't without a fresh brain, so Stacker directs him to Hannibal Chow, owner of the kaiju black market. Like the regular black market, only I'm not the one running it. Newt follows his directions and comes face to face with the businessman, who is very disturbed by the fact that Newt has drifted with a kaiju. Back at base, Stacker is Stacker is disciplining Mako and Riley for almost committing mass murder. Seems reasonable. After Mako is dismissed, Riley reveals what he saw inside of her memories, and it's revealed that the Jaeger that saved her life was piloted by Stacker himself. And someone else, but who cares? Stacker then adopted and raised her by himself, which is why he's so protective and doesn't want her in a Jaeger. Overprotective parenting or gatekeeping how cool it is to punch giant monsters? You decide. Sensors then detect what Herman had predicted, 2 kaijus emerging from the breach at once. The Chinese and Russian Jaegers are deployed to deal with it, while the Australian Jaeger is first reserve as they can't afford to lose it for their Nuke the Breach mission. And finally, in the movie about giant robots fighting giant monsters, we're gonna see giant robots fighting giant monsters. That was an EMP blast that completely neutralizes the Australian Jaeger as well as the entire facility. Gah, if only there was a nuclear-powered Jaeger who'd be immune to such an attack and who was also sidelined for this mission because his pilots were having connection issues like my parents. Oh, hello guys. Back out in the ocean, the lizard-looking kaiju heads off towards the city while the gorilla-looking one susses out its motionless opponent. One of the Jaeger pilots takes off his seatbelt but gets flung into the wall when the monster pokes the cockpit, breaking one of his arms. You'd think this would be a warning not to do anything stupid, but these guys are Australian, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible. They head out onto the scalp of their Jaeger and shoot flares into the beast's eyeballs, which obviously pisses it off. I don't know what their plan was, but now they are so gonna Hold on, can you hear that music? I'm sorry, this film is just so cool. I love watching murder on a giant scale. Not to be confused with murder on a giant scale. But there's still one kaiju left who is currently tearing up Hong Kong. And you know who's in Hong Kong? This guy. Newt makes his way to a public kaiju bunker but starts freaking out, worrying that the monster is hunting him specifically since he drifted with one of them. These suspicions are confirmed when the ceiling caves in and a kaiju tongue snakes its way towards him. It's a shame that kaiju are built and are born, because you know this one would be freaky. That's the worst thing I've ever said. The kaiju is confronted by the boat-wielding Jaeger ready for battle. And alright, let's do this one last time. Anyway, Riley and Marco return to base with the Australian pilots and get treated like absolute legends. Even Stacker arrives and congratulates them on their hard-fought victories. Back in Hong Kong, Newt returns to Hannibal Chow and demands a fresh kaiju brain, and lucky for them, fresh meat literally just crash landed. But the men inside the carcass make an insane discovery. The kaiju is, or I guess was, pregnant. The infant chokes itself in its own umbilical cord, that's Darwinism for you, but does provide the perfect specimen to drift with. Herman is with them now. I know I've just sprung that on you, but have sprung on me first, and he decides to join Newt in his drift to share the neural load. They carry it out successfully and learn the secrets of the breach, which makes them realize that their throwing nuke into the wormhole plan will not work. So they rush off to warn the others who are about to set off to carry it out. Another 2 kaiju have emerged from the breach, and with 2 operational Jaegers but only 3 available pilots, Stacker steps up to co-pilot the Australian Jaeger. He gives an Optimus Prime level speech to everyone, filling them with hope and inspiration before claiming,
Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
Why? Did it say a slur? And for one last time in the movie about giant robots fighting giant monsters, the Jaegers are deployed into the field, with a nuke strapped to Striker Eureka for throwing into the breach, or for martyrdom. Both Jaegers make their way towards the breach, with sensors detecting the 2 kaiju circling around them. At that moment, Newt and Herman arrive back at HQ. They steal the microphone and explain why the plan will not work, using their newly found knowledge from their drift. They claim that the breach will only allow kaijus to pass through it, meaning they'd have to ride one through the portal in order to get to the other side and detonate their bomb. But then a 3rd kaiju emerges from the breach, with this one being the biggest humanity has ever faced. The giant kaiju batters Striker, while Gypsy gets double teamed by the 2 smaller ones. A surprise attack from behind tears off one of its arms, leaving it vulnerable to a chomp to the knee. With their remaining arm, Riley and Marco stab one of the monsters in the head and drag it towards an underwater geyser, but their blade only pierces its brain, so it manages to free itself and swim away. The 2nd smaller kaiju then begins beelining towards them, but they use their blade to split it right down the middle. Meanwhile, Striker is struggling against the Leviathan, who seems unfazed by most of their attacks, except from this one, where they lift it up by its armpits like a parent does to a child. Only this parent has stabbed titanium blades into its child's lymph nodes. It calls for the smaller kaiju to come help it, with Gypsy Danger unable to chase due to its crippled leg. Oh, come on guys, you have a jetpack built into your chest. Just turn around and let it rip, idiots. Realizing there's no escape, Stacker decides to use their nuclear payload to hopefully eliminate the 2 remaining kaiju. Since Gypsy Danger is a nuclear Jaeger, it can be used as a backup bomb to destroy the breach and end the war. So Striker Eureka trigger their nuke as both kaiju charge towards them, leaving Gypsy Danger alone, limping towards the breach with the body of one of the monsters. But they're greeted at the breach by the giant kaiju who survived this. Okay.
I owe you an apology, I wasn't really familiar with your game.
Instead of bothering to fight, they launch themselves towards it, use a knife to hold on tight, activate their reactor to burn it to death, and ride its body through the breach. After entering the alien world, Marco starts losing consciousness due to the lack of oxygen, so Riley ejects her back up into the breach. He then triggers a meltdown of the Jaeger's nuclear reactor before ejecting himself, leaving the ticking time bomb robot to stare down the alien conquerors. After 60 seconds, the reactor detonates, annihilating the alien factory and closing the breach. Both Riley and Marco survive their trip back to Earth, with the pair embracing each other while waiting for their helicopter rescue. They do know they're only picking up 2 people, right? Seems a bit excessive. Wait a minute, did I get lured into a movie about giant robots fighting giant monsters, only for them to sneak a heartfelt human sniper onto my plate? The fucking nerve. And the movie ends. Great movie. I enjoyed the part where this film never had a sequel. And my favourite character was easily Old Man on Beach, because once I find a beach and am old, it's literally me. Oh, wow. 2 movies in a row about big robots fighting. I know what I have to do, but don't know if I have the strength to do it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this recap, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Thank you ever so much for watching.